Hey everyone, I want to welcome you back to my channel. So in the previous videos that I've been doing, we have been doing little scenes where I've illustrated a guy walking through some really eerie and mysterious forests and other settings. So this drawing, I'm going to be doing a creature, and instead of illustrating all out what the scene is, so fog and multi-layers, making sure everything has atmospheric perspective, what we're going to do is we're going to focus on the creature, and then on the ground or the immediate area I'll show you how to add in some plants, some indications of rocks, just to make it feel like not your typical thumbnail sketch that's just going to sit on the page and, what, for better or for worse, be boring. Alright, so the first creature that I'm going to be putting up here, it's going to be rather like a worm creature here. I don't really know what I want on this thing yet. All I know is that I do want it to be a worm, and I have these crazy spikes coming out on the side. The face, I'm going to point it. So think about different insects that you may see, even caterpillars, where some of their mandibles and little chewing devices and whatever else is on their face, that they grow out and then it kind of looks a little pointed. So that's what I'm going to be doing here. Now notice I'm keeping everything very loose. I'm sketching with a, see if you can see this in the light, I'm sketching with a 4B Faber-Castell, and then the paper itself is moleskin paper. Alright, so I know somebody's going to ask what materials I'm using, and honestly folks, everybody has their own preference as to what they want to draw with. I've been drawing with Faber-Castell. Well, I've been drawing with just the 4B grade, regardless of the pencil brand, for years. I just like how you can get dark with it and you can get light with it too. Alright, so right here it's kind of like a worm, and then maybe at the end I might put a stinger or whatever, but I want to show you guys something. So in previous lessons, I've taught you about motion. Even in the thumbnail stage, you want to try and have your creature be moving, not static. I know that we, as artists, have this tendency to want to make everything symmetrical, make everything exact. You know, if there's an antenna coming out of the head right here, which I'm going to put, the natural tendency is to go to the other side of the head and make the exact same thing in the exact same position. Well, add a little bit of chaos in there, folks. So I'm just going to dip it a little bit and curl it up to the top. Now I've changed everything. I've put a little bit of motion in there. What if this creature is feeling around in the air, or maybe it smells something and each one has detected a new scent? Think about that. Notice how the body is twisting to our right, and the creature is fixated on something that it hears to our right, and then the tail is actually flowing in the opposite direction. There's a big twist in the torso. Okay, we'll get into that later, but if you're drawing along with me, regardless of what it is, if it's a biped or whatever, just put a little bit of ground in here. Now, if you want to be really quick with it, it can just be loose and straight across. So when I add in the very first indication of a ground, I like to put tiny little hills in there, just to show like, hey, this creature is maybe dug into sand or dirt, or maybe that we're seeing a slight difference in the grade of the ground. So maybe this part is higher up than where this creature is. You know, it's just like a slight hill going down. All these tiny little nuances really add up when you want to do a scene. Next up, see, there's a edge of my sketchbook right there before the other page, so I got to be careful about this. Next, just very light indications, everybody. I'm just going to be putting in some plants. Now, a key when you're doing plants is try to disperse it as if it's exploding upward. Okay, here's where that habit comes in of making everything symmetrical. This is what will happen. People just do blades of grass straight up like this. Can that exist? Yeah, of course. Is it boring? Yes. So you want to make sure that you go to the left or right, and then when you go to the left or right, you overlap. So what that does is it creates like a sea of chaos in there. All these blades of grass are doing different things, maybe being blown by the wind, or maybe that's how they grow. You know, it's like no two blades of grass, no two trees grow the same out of the ground. So that's just something to remember. Now, a personal choice for me, I actually like doing the face pretty early on. It just gives me a sense of character, personality, and it makes me feel like I'm working on the main subject matter so I don't forget about it later, even though I know I'm not going to forget about it. So like with this one, I think what I'll do is just do a small little eyeball right there. And then once I get that in, maybe I'll put another one, just because this is like an alien caterpillar thing. And let's put an extra little pincer right there, or just something crazy. Now this is it's not a tiny drawing, but it's not large either. So I don't need to dive in to the nitty-gritty details and making sure that everybody sees everything. No, that's not what this is about. The next thing that we're going to do, we're going to take our pencil. So I'm going to hold the butt of the pencil in the back, and I'm going to make sure that my pinky guides my hand across the page, and I'm just going to lightly shade one pass across the entire thing, even the background. I'm not going to stay in the lines or anything like that. Okay, good. First pass is done. Now the second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tilt my sketchbook just a little bit. I'll turn it if I can. And then I'm going to hit it with direction number 2. So what this does is the first set of pencil strokes that I did, there's going to be gaps in between each stroke. Okay, you don't want any of the paper showing. So with each new pass, you're going to cover up those gaps. Now, when you shade once and then you work on the second pass, don't press harder in that second pass. Okay, what you want to do is you want to keep things light. So everything you're gonna press hard across. I'm sorry, that was not correct. You're gonna press lightly across everything. So this is pass number 3. Now typically, if you hold your strokes close together, pass number 3 is going to start filling up areas, and that's what you want. And then I'm not going to touch it. I'm not going to touch it. The next thing I'm going to do, go back to that face, and I'm going to think about all those tiny little, those weird mandibles in here, maybe pincers and teeth. And then I'm going to darken the tips of each sharp part. Now, those of you that know my techniques and know why I do this, I'm going to explain it again. It's because whenever you take the tips of tentacles, horns, nails, teeth, anything like that, and you darken the tips and you work the shading backwards like that, it creates a sense of completeness. It makes it seem and it makes you feel like you have completed that part of the body. It's may sound a little weird to some of you. Maybe some of you just go gung-ho and you just go right in there. That's fine. I like doing this just because it prevents me from freaking out and doing a bunch of tiny little nuanced, unneeded details and areas where you can't really see anyway. Because remember, this little creature is going to be in a setting, okay? There's going to be atmosphere, there's going to be dust and wind and maybe mist and fog. You're never really going to see a lot of the detail. And speaking of details, we have a tendency to put too much in a picture. So that would help prevent you from doing that. Now, one thing that I'm noticing, and I think I'm going to have fun doing this, is maybe adding a little bit thicker of a back right there. I am a huge fan of hunchbacks. Don't know why. Maybe it's because I grew up with American Werewolf in London and I just love that four-legged werewolf design, and it was just embedded in my brain when I was a kid. I also remember, you know, because I grew up in the 80s, so it was like the golden age of horror movies. I remember movies like Razorback, you know, like the giant killer pig. I mean, even the underworld werewolves, like all kinds of stuff, the wargs. and Lord of the Rings, like all those things, like really cool. But anyway, so I added that hunchback in there. I like that for the most part, but notice how I only have a very light outline of the body. That's when I would start shading and putting that in first before the details go on top. So I'm just going to lightly shade in. It's almost like I'm putting in a light silhouette before I go into the details, because that's ultimately what you want. You want to know where you're about to go with the details. So I'm just going to go up here and notice how I'm spending a little bit more time with the head area, and I'm just making it flow outwards down that neck. There is a reason for this, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to explain this in a minute. Okay, now if you're drawing along with me and you're trying the same technique and it's not working, it's probably because you're just not used to this yet. It just takes practice, so that when you're moving your hand, you know, it's second nature. A lot of people will comment and be like, how do you just make your lines so fast? There gets to a point where you don't think about it anymore. Think about all the things that you guys are good at right now. You don't think about it, you just do it. That will happen. You just have to trust the process. I think I'm going to do something a little creepy here. So there's an exposed part of the chest right here as this creature's looking over to its right, or our right. What if we fold some arms in right here? Almost human, but not quite. We'll just fold them down like this. So maybe there's like an indication of a shoulder right there. We'll have to indicate that those actually really are fingers. Maybe just keep it simple. 2 little hooked fingers. Oh boy, yeah, that's pretty creepy. But now I have to make sure that I'm showing you guys the correct thing. Its left arm won't be doing what the right arm is doing. Okay, so we have this right arm bunched up, keeping close to the body. This one, maybe we can have the arm kind of bent outwards and spreading the weird little hooked fingers. Okay, so the bicep is kind of covered. So it's almost like it's going to use its arm to reach out. I don't know if this is going to work, and that's probably a terrible position, but let's see what happens, because I may have screwed that up. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to go back to the head here, and I'm liking how this big spike is looking. So I think I'm just going to, or horn I should say, not a spike. I'm going to keep the strokes close together, and I'm really going to start to shade in those little areas. Now, this fun part is when we get into the little crevices and we know that light is not being exposed in there. So there's tiny little areas where you actually do have the excuse to go almost black, but not extensively, just a little bit. So like anything on the under part of the jaw here is going to be catching shadow. All right, so we're going to be lighting this from above. This also helps the silhouette pop out too. So anything along this little belly area right here, it's like the beginning of the neck / chest. We're going to put some darkness in there. The bottom of the horn coming out, I'm going to go thick to thin, right like this. So even in these tiny little areas, I need to be methodical about how I approach those strokes. There's going to be a core shadow along that horn. So I'm just going to put in some little circular motions just to get that core shadow in there. And then at the edge of that core shadow, I'm just going to fade that off into the rest of the horn. So I know that at least the darkest part's right around that edge. There's a crevice, right? See, we're getting technical, folks, but we have to. Okay, remember, the face is the focal point. This whole area where the edge of the face and the jaw meet the neck where it's squeezed in right there, I'm just going to press harder, and I'm going to release the pressure as I move up the neck. That adds in a crevice, like a shadowed crevice. So right away, the head is really starting to pop off now. This part of the face is showing up, and when I started this, I didn't really know how that head was going to look, what the pieces were going to be like. But now that I'm seeing it, I'm just going to put in tiny little teeth, maybe on the top right here. Yeah, now we're really getting somewhere. And I'm probably not even done with this head yet. I don't know what's going to go. Well, I kind of do now. I'm going to put in some feelers. Why not, right? Put in some feelers that are going to come out the front, and maybe a long one. I mean, how creepy would that be? And I'll put some little dots on there just to put some texture on it. Okay, so now we got this weird caterpillar creature. The second thing I'm going to do is let's put some spikes on the back, and instead of just normal spikes, I'm putting a little hump on there. So like one little step, two, and then I'm just gonna there, that's it. I'm not going to show anymore because remember the back is twisting, so you won't see all the spikes. All right, now we got that. Try to bring the spike shape into the back to show layering. That's where it's really important. So now we're getting a sense that this thing actually has a real body, and man, it's a lot of fun. So now I'm just going to put a little tree right here. See, this is why we keep everything light. Put a little tree right here, maybe a split trunk, something weird and swamp-like. Put a little tree right here. Okay, and then I'm just gonna kind of stop at these branches right there, and then maybe there can be some small little indications of plants right here. I'm gonna twirl some of them. Remember how I said to add the chaos in there? No two blades of grass, no two trees, no two plant stalks, anything, stems, no two are doing the same thing. All these little lines that I'm adding in here are random, but they're building up to be an actual structure. Okay, remember what I said? I'm going to do something right here. Well, I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. I'm going to start putting some shading in. It's going to be a little darker, right where the body is. I think I'm going to have morning mist just kind of like running across the bottom right here. So maybe this creature just woke up and it's searching for food. I really don't like that head. I'm actually going to extend it a little bit. There, I already feel better about it. It just looks better. It looks more aerodynamic. And that's what I needed. I can probably get in there and do some more shading too. So take a look at your drawings right now and see if the atmosphere that you're building is actually working. If you feel like it's not, then maybe you're just not done layering yet. Maybe there's some more layering you have to do with the atmosphere. You know, the fun thing is when you do thumbnails and you don't really know the shape of your creature and you don't really know how to pull shapes out of it, if you just add some texture on top of it, it kind of helps you make it feel like it's complete. It's a psychological thing. Like when we draw, we want to know that we finished our drawings. Not necessarily what others are going to think when they look at it. But, you know, we are our own worst enemies. So we always look at our drawings and go, I'm never going to finish this. It sucks. The shading is incorrect. All of that. And in all honesty, it's not. It's not incorrect. All right, remember that hand right there? Yeah. So here's the thing. The spikes on the body, since I darkened the tips of some of those, they're going to have to be darker than those fingertips because they're closer to us. So they're going to get some much needed love right there. And then I'm going to show some on the other side, but lighter. Now this is one of those instances where they actually can be symmetrical because I think the body for this creature needs them to be even. It's like a slithering tank almost. So it's going to need to be armored. It's kind of like, you know, a Scelidosaurus, Ankylosaurus, Sauropelta, all those dinosaurs that were basically walking tanks. Those things had to be even. Okay, well, the belly's going to need to be shaded a little bit. So I can just march that right down the belly. Didn't really draw the belly yet, but I think that might work. Okay, now we're really getting somewhere. Hopefully you guys are having fun with this. This is so much fun. All right, we're just gonna Keep working our way down. All right, now let's jump forward a little bit as I add some details in. All right, now that we've built up some values here, I can go back in and kind of tweak some areas just to see if certain ones really need to stand out. Now I like those giant claw-like things coming off of the side, and I think I'm going to use those to my advantage. So those can be a tone that's pretty dark, and when they grow out of the creature, they have this very menacing feel to them. I think that offers a lot of really good structure opportunity, and also it just looks a little sinister too. And now what I'm doing is I'm just putting in some shading in areas where it's growing out of the body. So I want to show some thickness right there. I don't want to go overboard with these values though, so they have to be subtle. Notice how I'm just using small little circular motions to put in, it's almost like a fatness around there, to know that they're growing out of this body right here. And there's only going to be 3 on each side, so I'm not going to have huge ones down here or anything. You've noticed that I've put in some darker bits where the ground is. I'm going to keep doing that. And the reason I'm getting dark at the ground is, look at the creature's belly. So the belly is light and then the ground is darker. This is where the play on contrast really comes in. So in my previous lessons, I am always telling you guys, always pay attention to any 2 values meeting, or any 3 for that matter, but keeping it simple, any 2. Okay, so in order for the ground and the foreground to show up, you would need to have contrast from anything surrounding the back of it. So the back as in the belly portion, you know, where the fog and everything is going to be. This is really going to help. And then whenever you're doing these little scenes, it's always a good idea not to abruptly end the dirt, but just kind of spread it out a little bit. So have some shading mixed in with loose sketching so that there's a lot of layering and there's a lot of interest happening. Because I can keep going over here doing the same thing. Now the tree trunk coming out, notice how the tree, it's actually closer to us than the creature. So we don't want to make this too dark, but we do want to darken up the trunk of it just a little bit. So I'm just going to use some dark to light right here, making sure that it's smooth. I'm going to work my way up the branch. See how the branch itself is darker than the atmosphere around it? That's what you want. Now the ground right here, here's a cool little trick. You just take the shading and you just flow it right into the ground. Right, like this. Even if you had some rocks already established right there, that's okay. So what I'm doing is I'm just shading downward into the paper where it's clear down here. Because then, once I get that value in, see how I'm just bringing it down across all of this ground? I can go back in and then I can start putting in some shadows directly on top of that. Right where the trunk meets the dirt. Just spread it out a little bit just to show some roots. And now the dirt is a different tone than the trunk, but this area is darker than the feet. So you can see here now that this is popping off. That's what you want. And now, since that tail in the back is so light, man, I can just start putting in some plants that may be growing immediately around the creature, because you know this is a thick forest. So who's to say that there aren't plants directly in front of it? Notice how darker I'm getting with those plants. Okay, I'm keeping things light in the back, keeping things a little darker in the front, and I'm just slowly and surely building up a nice little scene. I'm keeping things simple too, so I'm not putting in like tiny little flowers and shrubbery and all that. Well, the shrubbery's going in there, but I'm not freaking out about what each branch looks like. I don't need to do that. But I do want to show some imperfections in the tree too. Now, once I do that over by the tree, this is when you can really start to add in the organic nature of the scene that this creature is living in. Think about all the little things that we see on forest floors and jungles and everything. Just twisty, turny vines. Notice how these little squiggle lines kind of act like plants that have been trampled or that have just grown their own path. Some of them are darker, some of them are lighter. I'm putting in little bumps, maybe little indications of some slight leaves, maybe vines growing around here. Speaking of vines, maybe we can hang some right there. I mean, remember, this thing is living in a jungle, so there's probably like a canopy hanging down here. This is when you can really experiment and you can start putting in some really cool things. The edge of the creature, you can actually take some of the shading and just go all the way down with it. Because all of this is part of the atmosphere. See that tree that I just put behind there? I'm just shading over the creature. I don't even care if it's touching it. The creature is darker than that tree. So anything I put on the tree isn't going to show up. You got to trust the markings that you put down. See this here? See those spikes on the back of the creature? You can still see the tree trunks, and you can still see the spikes. It's fine. Okay? Because I can always go back in and just edge off some of those, but I don't want to do it too much, because remember, atmosphere. Some of these areas I do have to darken. Maybe like right in there, because if this thing's lit from above, there needs to be a play on values over here. There has to be a shadow. And I've barely indicated the feet or the tiny little claws that are coming out. So I'm just leaving that open to all of you for interpretation. Like, what's going on down there? Like, what does this thing look like? Is that like a big, what is this? Okay, is this a stump? Is this part of the leg? Pretty creepy. All right, so I'm just gonna put in some little, like little shading marks that are kind of coming off here. And honestly, I don't even know what those are. And I'm doing that on purpose because I want to give the sense of mystery. This thing is living and breathing in its own environment, in its own planet. We don't know what's there. We don't know what kind of atmosphere it lives in. We don't know what kind of plants that it needs in order to survive, if it eats meat, or who knows what else. And then you can start shading in some different shapes, maybe some bushes in the back, anything along those lines. There we go. Okay, darken up the face there a little bit. So there you have it, folks. If you're sketching along and you've drawn something, hopefully you've had a little breakthrough with your art. That really excites me when I hear that people are making new art that they haven't in a long time, or maybe they've had a little milestone or breakthrough. Hey friends, thanks for listening today. If you're interested in going deeper into creature design and seeing my process and behind the scenes, I do have a Patreon. Check the link in the description below and in the pinned comment. In my Patreon, I go through all kinds of reference gathering. I show you behind the scenes of clients and client work, and how I operate as a concept artist for games and film. So if you're interested in that, definitely check it out. We also have a Creature Design Workshop Discord. It's totally free to join. Check the links in the description below for that. It's a bustling community with all like-minded creature designers wanting to get better. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Until next time, peace.